when you do a book presentation like this, basically the message is always the same, which is please buy the book. So we are going to talk about our books briefly, but we're really more going to talk about our journey together, which has been, I think, a pretty interesting journey. And for me, it began, as Brian said, I was a humor columnist for many years, which means my job was to just sit around in my underwear and make things up. I always say it's a lot like being a consultant. Except a consultant would be wearing your underwear. But my job, it was literally my job to just think of weird stuff to do. And it was fun for me. It was a great, wonderful job. I can't imagine a better job. It was not so much fun for my kids. Because you know how like when you're, particularly in those like early teen years, hideously embarrassed by your parents, even if your parents are normal. But if your dad is a humor columnist, it's especially difficult. And I'm just going to give you one anecdote to illustrate what it was like to be a child of mine. When my son Rob was 12 years old, he was in middle school, I got a call at the Miami Herald from the Oscar Mayer Corporation saying that they were bringing the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile to Miami. Now the Wienermobile, I'm sure you're familiar with it, giant fiberglass hot dog in a bun, sits on a truck body. There actually are 6 Wienermobiles. A lot of people don't know that. This nation leads the world in Wienermobile technology, although Iran is developing one. But anyway, they like to get publicity for the Wienermobile, so they call me up at the Miami Herald, so we're bringing the Wienermobile to Miami, would you like to drive it for a day? And I said, heck yes. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to pick my son up in middle school. So there he was, and don't forget, Rob comes out of the middle school looking like that, and there's all these moms in their minivans, and looming up behind is a really big hot dog with a loudspeaker going, Rob Barry, please report to the Wienermobile. And if a 12-year-old could suffer a heart attack, he would have, but anyway, I know what you're thinking, Dave, that you know, it's fun for you, but you scarred your child psychologically for life. Yes, but it was worth it. So anyway, that's what I was doing. And let me move this over here. You're not using this, are you? No. That's what I was doing. And I did it for many years. And because I was doing that, I started writing some books. I got invited in 1992 by a woman named Kathy Goldmark, who is a literary escort in San Francisco, which means the person who picks you up and takes you to, when you're on book tour, takes you to your events and makes sure you get to the airport and everything. Kathy was also in the San Francisco rock scene, and over the years she had ridden in her car with many authors, and it's kind of like what Brian said, a lot of authors want to be in a rock band, or some of us have been in rock bands. And like in college I was in a rock band. And so Kathy had this idea in 1992, which was to ask everybody that she'd ever been in a car with, an author, if they'd be interested in just forming a rock band for one night and playing a fundraiser, First Amendment Foundation, First Amendment chair, yeah, out at the American Booksellers Association convention in Orange County. And the people who said yes became this band, the Rock Bottom Remainders. I was one, Ridley Pearson was one, Stephen King was one, Amy Tan was one, Barbara Kingsolver, Robert Fulghum, a lot of people, a lot of good authors, not necessarily good musicians. What I like to say is we play what I call the rumor method of music, which is everybody is playing something. And then a rumor goes around the band that there's been a chord change. It reaches different ones at different times, and then we all change to a different chord, but not necessarily the same, different. So we're not a great band. We played last night. I don't know if anybody here was there. Our sincerest apologies, but we had a great time. The crowd was wonderful last night. We had a lot of fun. But anyway, so I'm in this band now, and Ridley Pearson's in the band, and he's the bass player. And Ridley actually was a professional musician at one time, and he's a very good bass player, a very good singer. So I learned in the band to watch Ridley, who would often know important information, like what chord are we playing? What song are we playing? Are we still playing it, or have we finished the song? He knows this kind of thing because he's a musician. So I would watch Ridley. We became buddies. We're very similar in a lot of ways. And and we became friends, sort of outside the band. Everybody in the band's friends, but really I formed a very close friendship. And like one year, when I hadn't known him, maybe about a year, I guess, he invited me out to Sun Valley, Idaho, where he had a place and still has a place. And I went out to hang out with Ridley in Sun Valley, Idaho. And I discovered Ridley's a strange man. For one thing, it's like he said one day, I thought we would climb a tree today. We're grown men, even then. But Ridley, it's a sport, and he has all this equipment, and he climbs very high. We found the most dangerous tree in Idaho. And it was like leaning out over a beaver pond. Remember this? And he made me climb it. And like the beaver are down there going, oh man, that's not it. Whoa! We better clear out, they'll be coming down soon. That tree is not safe. Even the beavers knew that. We bonded over the tree. But I discovered that Ridley is a very, very weird individual. Not just because of the tree, but because of the way he thinks. And there was a little country store in Haley, Idaho. And we had, when I first got there, we got to go get stuff for breakfast for the next day. And I'm a coffee drinker, so I wanted to get some coffee. And they had one of those machines where you poured the coffee beans in and put the bag underneath, and it grinds the beans through into the bag. And so I'm doing that. It's like, 8 o'clock in the morning, I haven't had my coffee yet, and I'm grinding my beans. And Ridley comes up and looks at this and goes, somebody could put poison in that thing. And then the next person would come along and pour coffee beans on top and grind it down. So the coffee would have poison on the bottom. And then the last cup you brewed from that would kill whoever did it. No one would ever know where that. And then he walked away, leaving me grinding my beans. And Ridley is a tea drinker. But anyway, so that's how we got to know each other. And there's another slide I want to show. The band, for those of you who were not there yesterday, like I said, we're not everybody's cup of tea. We played a show in Los Angeles Book Fair, and somebody took this picture. It shows me and Ridley singing, and it shows the audience reacting to. So anyways, I'm going to bring him up now. Just so you know, he's a very strange guy. That's really the point of all this. We're friends, but he's strange.
So when you're in a rock band with people like Amy Tan and Stephen King, you get to learn what true crazy fame is all about. And they're wonderful people, but their readers are slightly insane. We didn't break down. We went in for gas, and we ended up, Steve King decided he wanted to be a rock star, so he wanted to do a tour. And we rented Aretha Franklin's tour bus, and we went from Providence, Rhode Island through Boston and all the way down to Miami, through 10 cities, and raised money for causes, including a soccer thing, which I have no idea why we did that. Along the way, at about 4 in the morning, we were in Alabama or Georgia or somewhere, and we all pulled over. They were going to fill up with gas, and we all decided that we would take a pee break, and we went into this truck stop. The whole band went in there. And on the way out, Dave Barry stopped at all these truck parts. This is 4:15 in the morning. And starts making these incredible jokes and waking us all up with this absurd, well, you know what you could use this for? And we get out to the gas pumps, and I kid you not, there were 4 people standing in front of our bus with their stacks of Stephen King books. So let me do the math for you. We pull in at 4 o'clock. One of the gas jockeys recognizes Stephen, calls his friend gets up, his friends get dressed, his friend calls another friend, they get their books, they get in a car, they drive over, and 12 12 minutes later, they're standing there with Stephen King books. That started to give us a taste of what we were up for. We then later played a club, which was sort of one of these, southern, where they put the chain link fence in front of you because people are going to throw bottles. That quality of a club. And in fact, it didn't have any stalls on the bathroom doors. No bathroom stall doors. And Stephen came out and said, I can't go in there. There's no stalls. And we're playing the last song of the night, and people were feeling sorry for us. And they lit their lighters, and they're swaying, and they've got their cell phones, and they're going, and Stephen's singing a song, and the whole place is having this Bob Dylan moment. And Dave and I are back there playing, trying to find the right chord. And I look down in front of Stephen, and there's a woman, 35 years old, attractive woman, and she's standing like this. All 10 fingernails on fire. No kidding. And I went bombing over to Dave, and I said, Dave, I never want to be that famous. Hopefully she put them out somehow. Through our friendship, I would often visit down here for the Miami Book Fair and other events. And one time, about a week before I got down here, I had been reading Peter Pan to my then, our 5-year-old daughter, Paige. Marcel, my wife, is here today. And we always read to the kids every night. And I was reading a little novella of Peter Pan to Paige. And she was a bit precocious, and she put her hand right across the page. I'd only been like 3 pages in. And she said, Dad, how did Peter Pan meet Captain Hook in the first place? And I went, whoa. I said, that's a story, sweetie. And I said, actually, that's a book, and Daddy's going to write the book. And I dumped her off my lap, and I ran to my office, and I started making notes. There's this kid who can fly. Where do mermaids come from? How did Tinker Bell get here? How did Peter Pan meet Captain Hook in the first place? And I was just, flipping out that there was a prequel to Peter Pan. And a week later, I was down here. I was staying with Dave, and we were at his breakfast table. And he said, what are you doing? And I said, Paige told me this amazing thing, and I'm thinking maybe there's a prequel to Peter Pan. And Dave's red bloodshot eyes kind of did this for a second. And I said, dude, you write booger jokes for a living. I kill people for a living. I write crime novels. Maybe the two of us could get together and write a funny, suspenseful book about how a nondescript boy becomes Peter Pan. And that became Peter and the Starcatcher. It was an amazing time. The book was meant to be, and I kid you not, our idea was we were going to write an 80-page book. We were going to go to Kinko's. We were going to get 2 copies for Dave and 2 copies for me. That was it. And at the time, I was working with Disney on a series called The Kingdom Keepers. I was still in development stage with that, and I mentioned to my editor that I said, Dave Barry and I are writing a prequel to Peter Pan. And she said, what? We own Peter Pan. And I said, yeah, well, we're just writing a prequel for our kids. And she said, send me some chapters. And I said, why do you want chapters? She said, send me some. So I sent 3 chapters we'd done. And about a week later, we had this monster deal for like 3 Peter Pan books with Disney. And it became Starcatchers. That led to book tours. And book tours lead to really strange things when you're in Florida. Mind you, I grew up in Connecticut, and then I've lived in Idaho for a very long time. But I came down here to Books and Books with Dave. And we had a nice crowd of young kids and their parents. It was pretty crowded and pretty hot in there. We had some publicists with us, take care of us. We don't need taking care of, but they were with us. They just get a free trip to Florida. And we're in the middle. We like to dress up for the kids, so I think I had a cape on or something, and Dave had a wig on or something, or maybe an eye patch. And we're reading a piece in one of our books about this gigantic snake. And all of a sudden, a gentleman from the Miami area, wearing all khakis, like the guys who used to sit with Johnny Carson, walks in, clearly had been sampling adult beverages prior to this moment, and he put onto Dave an 11-foot, 90-pound python. Now, this freaked us both out considerably because he just walked off to the bar. He left. And the snake liked me. It didn't like Dave. It went right across Dave's arm. You can see how thin it is. It's only about that thick. It weighs as much as 2 bags of concrete, and it goes around my neck. The way they kill you is they strangle you. It goes around my neck, and it comes right up. It has a head the size of a coconut, and it comes right up to my ear. And you know in Harry Potter where they speak with parcel tongue or whatever it is? This thing is going, and Dave starts shaking, and he goes, "Is that you?" And I said, "It's the snake, it's the snake!" And our publicists run to the other end of the room. And Dave had the great line that by the end of that night, we needed to change our underwear. So back to some very strange moments being...
When you do a book for Disney, you're not just doing it for, most publishers, they just put out your book and put you on a tour. Disney, you become part of the Disney thing, and you have to make certain adjustments in your lifestyle and in your willingness to make a fool of yourself. We ended up doing a bunch of book events at Disney World, and we haven't done them even in Disneyland, and they're fun, but they're very elaborate. The one that was sort of the most embarrassing of our Disney events, we were up there with our families, our kids and us, and our wives and us, and they said, you're going to be the grandmasters of the parade, of the noon parade. You've been to, you all have been to, it's like the whole park gathers around, and this gigantic parade with all these floats goes through the parade. And they said, you're going to be the grandmasters, which means you'll ride in the front of the parade. And we thought that's cool, and the kids thought that was very cool. So we take us to this backstage area, and there's giant parade is formed up of all these fantastic Disney floats. And they put us in this antique car with Clarabelle the Clown, which I think was kind of a diss to us, because that's not an A-list. I didn't even remember she was part of the Disney. No, she hasn't done anything in years. But Clarabelle is our, so we're in Clarabelle, of course, being Clarabelle can't say anything, so we're just sitting there. And we're all ready to go, and they open this giant gate, and out we go. And I'm not sure whether this was intentional or there was a problem with the float behind us, but nobody followed us. So we just went out, and there were at the time, there were literally 100,000 people in the park that day. Waiting for this parade. Everybody's been waiting forever, and their kids, swatting their kids and everything. And so we're out there, and they tell you to wave. So we're waving, Clarabelle's waving, and we go around, and it's just us. There's nobody behind us. Here we are see how unthrilled the people in the background. They're looking around this is the parade. Who are the jerks with Clarabelle? So that was one of the more embarrassing. The other one we did an event with not that same time, but we did a big book signing for Peter and the Starcatchers at the Disney Contemporary Resort with Peter Pan and Captain Hook, and they built this whole set for us. It was like a pirate ship. It was very Disney, and they had a cannon that went a boom. Big. Didn't shoot cannonballs because that would kill innumerable people from Ohio, but it was booming, and Peter Pan and Captain Hook were dueling behind us, and there was a huge crowd. It was really a great sign. It was a lot of fun, but there's they had us wait while the crowd was forming and everything in this little very small room backstage, and I don't know where Captain Hook was, but it was me and Ridley and Peter Pan for 15, 20 minutes in a pretty small space. So a little awkward, but we thought, well, we'll make, talk, we'll chat with the guy. He works here. We're here, we're working, So I go to him, so how do you like working here? And he goes,
it's a beautiful day in Neverland. Have you seen Wendy?
I swear to God, that's what he did. in a little room with us. And we're like, no, dude, we haven't seen Wendy. We're in a closet with you here. So you want to talk about a long 15 minutes of your life, try hanging out with Peter Pan backstage, because from that moment on, we're like, I'm not saying another word. I don't know what else he'll say. All right. So anyway, so that was our first. So that was Peter and the Starcatchers. Ridley's going to talk about what happened next.
We ended up writing 5 Peter and the Starcatchers books, some books for younger readers. Disney came to us and asked us if we would do an illustrated book, like a 38-page read to your kid book, but based on their Peter Pan, not on J.M. Barrie's Peter Pan. We had so much fun. We wrote for 10 years. We wrote 12 books. And along the way, Disney would make offers about, should we make this into a movie? Should we make this into some sort of animated movie? What can we do? And a bunch of those things sort of fell by the wayside. And then we got a call, and they said, what if we turned your book into a play, since J.M. Barrie started with a play and then eventually turned it into some books? He knew how to milk the same cow multiple times. And yeah, Clarabelle. And so we said, great, that would be, a thrill and an honor. And so Disney began a 6-year project to develop Peter and the Starcatcher, if they could. They weren't even sure it would work, as some form of play. And it ended up a play with music. It was written by a guy who at the time was just a reader for the Disney system. He would read books to see if they might be good plays. And on the side, he was working on a theater play that he hoped might get done, a musical, a little thing called Jersey Boys. So we ended up having Rick Ellis, who had co-written Jersey Boys, as our writer. And it could not have been a greater marriage in heaven. We had so much fun. They developed it. It went out to La Jolla, where it was workshopped. I had never seen this process, but they invite an audience just about this size. You pay $25, you come in, you see the play, and you're invited, if you want to stay after and comment on what you've seen. And maybe 25 or 50 people would stay, and they'd make comments, and all the creatives were lined up on the stage, and they all took notes. Rick went back every evening, rewrote the script according to what the creatives had decided should change. This is where you learn what actors are about. The actors would come back at 9 in the morning, and of course, it's in places a totally new script. They would forget what they knew and relearn all their movements and lines and do it exactly right that night, and then it would change the next night. And that went on for 21 or 25 days, something like that. And Disney liked it enough that they moved it to New York, and we had an off-Broadway opening for it in New York, and that went well enough that finally they put it onto Broadway. And these are some scenes from the Broadway production. They did it very creatively. It was almost like it was in the 1880s or something. And then they had this ribald start to the second act where everybody turns into mermaids. And you can see they were a little short on prop money. So, they were using vegetable strainers and other things for the thing. And then it's gone on to, for the last 12 years, it's been in the top 10 of the most produced plays in the United States. Thank you. Dave and I have seen approximately $17 from that. We really thank you for that.
Wait, you got 17?
I didn't tell him. But just last month, a group of puppeteers and actors in Australia have opened the show, and it's a much more Broadway-ish, big deal production. And that's on right now. Marcel and I are going down in January to see the opening in Sydney. They're opening it in each town, but it's really fun and it's going really well. The joy of writing for kids versus adults is that kids often tease their reading off of your books. Parents will read it aloud, and the kid starts to read with you, and then eventually the kid says, "Get out of my bedroom, I want to read this, Mom." And so we get a lot of fun emails from parents and kids where we've helped them start reading and they've enjoyed the reading. And there becomes this bond between parent and child, as you know, as you read, you want to get to the next chapter. I want to stay up, can I stay up a few more minutes and we read another chapter? So I got an email from a parent one time, and this woman said, "Hi, my name's Katie Coleman, and I'd really like to take your book that you co-wrote with Dave Barry on a business trip, and I'm just writing you for your permission." And I thought, who is this person? They don't need our permission to take this on a business trip. Well, they did, because it turned out Katie Coleman was going to the International Space Station. And she wanted to take our books with her because her son and she were reading the books every night. So she decided she would read them from space with her son. And it was just, hey, she's reading science fair there, Dave. So she took more than Peter and the Starcatchers up there. That's why it isn't functioning at the moment. It has too many of our books in it. But she was supposed to come down, I think, in May or June, and in mid-April, and Dave's going to have to come up and tell his side of this, but we were sitting around our kitchen table, and one rule of the kitchen table was no cell phones. And so my cell phone rings, and I knew I can't answer it, and I looked down, and it says unknown, and I thought, God, I got to answer this, and I looked at Marcel, and she was like, don't answer it, and so I answered it, and I said, hello, and she said, Ridley, this is Katie Coleman. And I said, Katie, I thought you were coming down in May. And she said, Ridley, I'm calling you from the International Space Station. And I got to put my hand over my phone and say to my family, shut up, I'm getting a call from outer space. And where were you, Dave?
So I just want to say where I was. Michelle and I were with our daughter, Sophie, and when we got the call, we were at a restaurant, and it was Johnny Rockets.
So I've had the good fortune to work with Disney for 20 or 25 years now. They had asked me years ago in my crime writing days, and I'm still writing crime novels, but if I could write a thrilling, adventurous novel set inside their parks where absolutely nothing bad could happen. And I said, but thrillers generally have, nope, you can't have sabotage, the kids can't get hurt, there can't be any criminals, no weapons, but we really want a thriller. So I submitted 3 or 4 or 5 outlines. They said, no. They ran them by their attorneys, no. And eventually I submitted one, and it became Kingdom Keepers. It was one book. It didn't do that well when it came out, and then it came out in paperback, and it took off, and they came back and said, could you write 2 more? So then I had 3 books, and then they came back and said, could you write 2 more? And then I had 5 books, and then they came back and said, could you write 2 more? And I had 7 books, so I closed that series at 7, and they said, could you write some more? And I wrote The Return, which was 3 books, and then a couple years ago, they came back and said, could you write some more? Well, I had written about the Kingdom Keepers, and I didn't want to overdo that and repeat myself. I'd written about opening day in Disneyland with the Kingdom Keepers there for 3 books, because that was a weird day in Disney history, if you know anything about it. And then I thought, no, I don't have any more ideas, and I have no other setting for this. Well, in Epcot, there are diagrams of Walt Disney's dream, which was to have a community around Epcot. And then I had that idea of what if I set it in the future? I could do an homage to Walt's idea and have a community of maybe 40,000 people who live in and around Epcot, and the Kingdom Keepers would now have married, and they would have kids, and the kids would end up with hijinks of jumping through portals and going to international, because of course I had to tax write off going internationally to all the Disney places. So I've written the Inheritance series. The 3rd one, Final Draw, comes out at the end of February. This will be the 13th book in the series. I was born on March 13th. And I actually got to the end of these books and cried at my desk. I had no sense it was coming, but I put the last period on the sentence, and I just broke into tears because I'd been with these friends for 20-some years, and I wasn't going to revisit them. So that comes out. I'm thrilled about that, and Disney has now asked me to write for a younger group. I think they just think my brain's failing, and could he write, shorter sentences or something? So I'm writing a 6-book series called The Magical Map, which they're only 10,000 words. It's a very short little book, kind of like a Babysitter's Club or something. It's highly illustrated, but it's about a Disney map that comes alive when the kids touch it and they end up inside Disney attractions. I can't get away from the same stories. And now Dave.
So Ridley is the king of Disney, and because I've been hanging out with him, I had all these wonderful backstage tours of Disney with Ridley. Some of them are a little like you almost don't want to know. We did this tour of the Animal Kingdom, and so there's all these animals. I don't know if you've been to the Animal Kingdom. They have real animals. They're not fake animals. There's lots of them, and they eat. They have to eat. So Disney feeds them. They're not all eating vegetables. Okay, there's carnivores. So there is on the Disney property the largest collection of small rodents, big rodent, animals that have to be alive and dead that have to be fed to them. And it would really be kind of more entertaining in a way to just go watch them feed them than to watch them walk around and poop, which is what you see most of the time. But also we've done a bunch of, like, when the parks are closed, tours of the parks. But we had one of our Starcatchers books had a thing that was set in the Peter Pan ride. It was a very important part of the plot, and we had to get it exactly right.
This is because Dave introduced Einsteinian physics
To
a
the-
kid's
yeah.
book. Thank you.
So we had to go, and they opened it up for us. Like it was a cold morning in Orlando, and we rode this. These poor people were standing, and they had to be wearing the costumes because there's all these Disney rules. We rode the Peter Pan ride like 20 times, trying to get it exactly right. Just two grown men alone.
Looking at their
And
watches.
every company, then would they go, "You done? No, we got to go again. We got to go again." Anyway, so I want to talk very briefly about Swamp Story, and then we're going to take your questions. This is a novel that I wrote, and it's for sale. Now, yeah, it's always weird to talk about novels because you don't like, well, here's the story, But basically, the idea was it was originally going to be called Python Challenge. And because I've always been fascinated by the Python Challenge, I don't know if, you all Floridians, you probably know, it's the stupidest thing ever, even for Florida. The idea is we have too many Burmese pythons in the Everglades. They're an invasive species, like New Yorkers. And I'm a New Yorker, so I can say that. No, but they're not supposed to be here. They're supposed to be they're Burmese python. They're supposed to be in Burma, wherever the hell that is, But what happened was somebody had a python as a pet, and these are giant carnivorous, snakes. They get to be huge, so somebody had them as pets, and then they ran out of crack, and I go, whoa, my God, we're living with a giant snake here. Let's let it out, let it go. We don't want. So they let them go, and they thrive. They have no natural enemies at all here. Except maybe the New Yorkers, I don't know. And so now the Everglades are infested with these pythons. There are hundreds of thousands of them, according to the estimates. And so the state of Florida, to get rid of them, has a Python Challenge, which is basically we invite anybody who wants to come on down and kill our pythons. But it's a state-run thing, so that you can't just kill them. You have to take a little online course about how to kill the pythons. Ask anybody who's ever dealt with dangerous animals how you learn to do that. An online course is a way to, you should really go see the Florida State Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission website explaining how to kill a python, and you're not allowed to just chop the head off, which I would have thought would be the way to go, but you can't do that. It's, why? It's inhumane. Because the brain keeps working. That is not I'm not saying that, the Florida State Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. The python is still thinking after you, it doesn't say what it's thinking. Like, probably something like, whoa, what the hell, So you have to kill it by shooting a bolt through its brain. Anyway, that's the way you're supposed to do it. So anyway, they invite people to come down. And every year it's a big deal. They have opening day of Python Challenge and the closing day, and they have prizes for the longest Python and the most Pythons and so on. And every year they announce the results, and it's like 200 Pythons, 300 Pythons. And there's hundreds of thousands of pythons, and they're laying eggs. Like one single female python can have more than 100 babies a year. So in other words, the pythons are winning the Python Challenge, okay? They're killing us at the Python Challenge. So anyway, I just always thought that was really stupid, and I wanted to write a story about the Python Challenge, and it just so happened that as I was just getting started on it, and it really cries at the end of his, I cry at the beginning. I'm just getting started. I heard this quote, and I was talking with the authors last night, and everybody agreed this is the most perfect quote to tell an author. Writing a book is like reading a book, except the book hates you. So anyway, I'm having breakfast. Michelle and I are having breakfast with Carl Hiaasen and his wife, and I've just started in this book, and I'm telling Carl, he's, what are you working on? So I'm doing this book, and he said, oh, I just finished a book. And I said, yeah, what? So he's telling me, I said, does your book have snakes in it? He goes, a lot of snakes, Dave. It's called Squeeze Me, and it's all about pythons. So I realized I'm not going to write, because I already get accused enough of ripping off Carl Hiaasen. I'm not going to write. So I had to change change the plot completely. But the Python Challenge does play a role in this book, but it's not really central to the plot. And I'm not going to tell you what the plot is, except to say that it involves creatures in the swamp and a lost treasure. And there is a love story, but most important is the one element this book has that I don't think any book ever written besides mine has, which is a time-traveling chiropractor. He doesn't play a big role, but he's in there. So if you read that in any other book, they're ripping me off. That's what I'm saying. So let me just look at the clock here and see. Okay, we have time for like maybe 10 minutes worth of questions. If anybody has questions, there's a microphone. I think I'm supposed to ask you to use the microphone to ask your question.
That's a short question for Dave, going back to the beginning of the hour.
Yes.
What does your son think about you now?
What does my son think about me now?
Yes.
No, he's fine with me now. He's 44. So I think the last couple of months he's gotten over what happened.
He doesn't eat hot dogs.
But he's actually he's a dad now. He has two kids of his own that he's embarrassing, so he can sort of relate to it. So I've got grandkids, and what I say about grandkids are wonderful. They really are. It's great to have grandkids. They like to play with grandpa. That's fun. It's where they want to play with grandpa, on the floor. And I'm 77 years old. When you're 77, the floor is like North Korea. You don't just go there on the spur of the moment, Like, how are you going to get back, But I think he's over it. I think he's good.
Hi, Dave. So I've been thinking that lately America is becoming, Florida's having a moment. So in the popular culture, like shows like Bad Monkey and It's Florida Man, and we're exporting a lot of our weird politicians to Washington, D.C.
Yeah, we're not like we're running we're the cabinet, like it's basically just going down the phone
Yeah.
book.
So do you think you're to blame for this?
What?
Do you think you're to blame for this?
I'm sorry.
Do you take the blame for
No,
this? Or the
look,
credit?
here's what I say. Florida, we get a lot of crap down here. We really do, because a lot of weird stuff happens here, and people do stupid things here. But here's what I mean, statistically, it's really unfair. There are 23 million people in this state. Is it fair to judge 23 million people just because of the actions of 21 million people? That's my feeling. No.
All right, I've got two questions for Ridley about the Kingdom Keepers. One, when you wrote the sequel series, were you thinking of it as a continuation to the rewrites or the originals?
Oh, to the originals.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then my other question is, when you wrote the sequels, did you consider the return part of the timeline?
Part of the timeline of...
Part of the timeline of the Kingdom Keepers when you
Yes,
wrote the
but
sequel?
of course it follows the first 7 books.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the thing about opening day at Disneyland, if you don't know this, it was a big risk because it was a huge investment. I think Walt Disney had gone bankrupt 2 or 3 times trying to get this thing off the ground. And they built it, and they were having an opening. So they invited 5,000 media representatives from around the world and sent them these little sort of mimeograph tickets. So they expected 5,000 people. The little mimeograph tickets were easy to copy, and they ended up with 15,000 guests. So you can imagine having a dinner party for 15 people and you get 45 people. So that was the first thing that happened that was weird. The second thing was that the head of maintenance came to Walt Disney on the morning of the opening and said, the city has just cut our water draw in half. So we can either have the bathrooms work or the water fountains work. And thankfully, Walt chose the bathrooms. They had laid asphalt just a day or 2 before the opening. And the asphalt was still warm, and it was a hot day. And in 1957, all the women came in high heels, and they came right out of their high heels. And they would step on the asphalt and then walk forward in their stockings, back up, put their high heels. So everybody was getting stuck, losing shoes. And despite this, they got good reviews, and it opened. But anybody else who tried this, it would have been a disaster and never have opened. So I sent the kids back there after the first 7 books just to explore this world.
It was really cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, this is also a question for Ridley, kind of about the Kingdom Keepers and the rewrites. What was the process like, kind of choosing what to keep and what to change, aside from the obvious rides that have changed and stuff? But I noticed there's a lot of changes in a lot of them.
Yeah, it was really hard. So what happened was the books are written about the attractions in Disney, but by 20 years in, the attractions had changed or stopped. A lot of the clues in the book, which kids would go into the park, unbeknownst to me and Disney, and they would follow the books, and those clues disappeared. So it became a hassle for Disney because they would go up to cast members and say, where's the poster that I'm supposed to, and it wasn't there anymore. So Disney said, could you please rewrite the books? This is at the start of the pandemic. And I said, all 7 books? And they said, yes, for free. And so I spent the pandemic writing all 7 books from the beginning to the end. And it was really hard to choose what to use and what not to use. And there were parts of it like the culture had evolved to the point that they didn't like the kids having crushes on each other. So I had to cut that out of the books and things, and that to me was the whole book.
Devastating.
So it was a really interesting thing, but they all ended up quite different.
Yeah, very fun to have new content. I enjoyed reading the rewrites.
Thanks.
As well.
First of all, thanks so much for who you are and for what you do and why you do
That's
it.
for you.
You
Right.
unleashed, you've unleashed tremendous joy to millions of people. So my question is what you said, Dave, a little bit earlier, joking about sort of ripping off Carl Hiaasen. What do both of you think now about the role of artificial intelligence and the way that these systems have been built and kind of scraping, intellectual property and things like that?
Ridley? The only thing I'll say is that a former wife wrote me after all this happened and said, and this is all we're going to go into about AI, but she said, I just received the list of how they trained ChatGPT, and 16 of our books collectively were on the list. So you guys are in trouble if you ask ChatGPT to write anything because it's going to be really funky.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't really have an intelligent answer to that. I do know this. When they first released ChatGPT, it was the beginning of last year, I think. At least 100 people, and I think it was more than that, said, I asked ChatGPT to write a column Dave Barry style, and they all sucked.
Oh, okay.
but I think they're sucking less, and I'm nervous now. You know, so someday, I was like reassured that okay, I could do lots of things, but it can't be funny. But now I think it's gotten so it can even be funny. Like, I'm not even sure you're real.
Well,
100%.
well,
Because you're a little tall, you know, you don't fit in this room, really. It got everything else about you right. I mean, your head looks right, but your body's way too big.
Is that
What are you saying?
Is that a compliment or an insult?
I don't know. I'm reading this off of the. This looks like a water bottle to you,
You're doing
doesn't
a
it?
good job. Okay, smart Alex. So here's the second thing I was not going to say, but I'm going to, which is I do superhero comics to help protect people from hackers and romance scams and things like that.
You do superhero comics.
Yeah, it's
to
called.
protect people from romance scams.
Well,
Because like if somebody's reading a superhero comic, there's no way he'll be romantically involved. Am I getting it?
you're indicting a whole group of people.
Yeah.
I mean, Marvel's pretty big.
Yeah,
But
no.
anyway, so quickly.
You're a little defensive, aren't you?
I'm actually very defensive.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're almost done.
All right. No, but wait. I would like to collaborate with you guys. That's all I'm
no,
going to say.
absolutely not.
Thank you.
Thank you. One more question. Well, we'll take the two real quick. Okay. Yeah.
My question actually is about collaboration, not with anyone here, but I wrote a book in the 80s, and a friend of mine and I have decided to write a book for her grandchildren.
For her.
For what?
Grandchildren.
For her grandchildren.
Good.
I love the idea of getting down on the floor, being like North Korea.
You do?
I'm taking that. I'm stealing that. What was your actual process for working together on books?
It was first of all, it was wonderful because Ridley, but you have to, first of all, you have to be really good friends, and we are good friends, and that was the most important thing. But we don't write the same way. Like Ridley knows everything he's going to do for the rest of his life already. It's written down somewhere. I don't know what I'm going to do after I finish this sentence. So Ridley had this idea we would outline the books. Like, what?
Dave had to look that up in the
What
dictionary.
is that even about? But we did it, and it worked out. It was really good to know the ending of the story before we started the story. And then the way we wrote them, the chapters, we called it ping pong. I took one set of characters, and Ridley took another set of characters. And when it was a chapter with my characters, I wrote it and it was his. And then you write your chapter and send it to the other guy, email it. And then the rule was he could change anything he wanted, anything, and didn't have to explain any changes. And that's unusual. That's not how it usually works with publishing at all. But, you know, no explanations. This is what I think is better. And then the other guy would get it back and, you know, either accept it or accept some of it or change it all, send it back. And sometimes they would go back and forth a bunch of times. And that's why we called it ping pong. But eventually we got much closer in tone from the beginning, from the first try, from the first draft. But that's how we did it.
Well, first off, I'd like to thank both of you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Peter and the Starcatchers has been a foundational book. Like, it sort of altered my brain chemistry at a young age. Good
You're
or bad,
welcome.
we have yet to determine. But I remember having a close encounter with the Oscar Mobile when you visited Sunset. I'm not in a wheelchair, so it was a good close encounter.
Good.
And you mentioned earlier about writing a book is like reading it, except the book hates you. And Brandon Sanderson had a podcast, and he mentioned how there is something like writing hangover, where you're getting to the last bits. How do you find the motivation? And this is sort of a question for all authors. How do you find the motivation to keep going, to keep saying, okay, I gotta write this, I gotta finish this, I gotta put something out there? Yeah, exactly.
No, you go ahead.
Well, for me, it's two motivations. One is like I signed a contract. I say this to everybody that, you know, everybody I know who writes for a living, and I know a lot of people who write for a living, nobody finds it easy. And the only reason that they write is because they can't do anything else. So they just sit there, and there's a lot of time, most of the time, when you think what you're writing is crap. And if you get discouraged by that or just think, I don't feel like writing today, you will never be a writer. Because it's the idea that it's just going to come out of you and it's going to be great. Anybody who writes like that is a terrible writer. It is just not going to be good. It's the people who struggle with it and think it's terrible and have to make it better and don't want to write today, but they do anyway, who become writers. And you don't really have to, and to me, that's more important than actual talent. That quality of wanting to write and writing every day, no matter what,
Persistence
and not
despite
being
everything.
satisfied with it, and never thinking you're that good at it is what. And I'm talking. I know Stephen King. He's and that's how people write. Anyway.
No, same thing.
All right. Thank you all for coming
you.
out.